This is a battle between Greek Iraklis and Armenian King in the Fury of Barbarians tournament. And this is an interesting matchup, to say the least. We have something Germanic in the Visigoths versus... And the Visigoths are commanded by Iraklis, and the Sassanids are commanded by Armenian King. Armenian King has brought the big boys, Pushtigba and Cataphracts. Very solid shock cavalry, devastating on the charge. So he has 5 Pushtigban, 1 gold Persian noble. They are supported by 6 elite Daylamites. Up front he has the very cheap, he likes to do this, have a front line of very cheap bows, 6 bows, and it's a very good idea to have that. For the Visigoths and Iraklis, we have, he also likes his shock cavalry, it seems, 6 noble Gothic lancers. We have 1 Thracian warriors of all things, so a total of 5 Thracian warriors and 1 Germanic noble. Wow. A center consisting of 4 Gothic pikes. Behind those he has 4 Germanic archers. So what Iraklis has done in all his battles is have some sort of front screen, pikes or cheap infantry, then good amount of skirmishers, then supporting cavalry. You'll have shock infantry that's going to be able to deal with both enemy cavalry and enemy infantry very, very quickly. So this is a dangerous combination, because the shock cavalry does massive damage on the charge, and then they are followed up by these Thracians. They in essence take over when the shock cavalry has done its damage. These infantry units essentially take over for the role of doing prolonged damage that shock cavalry isn't able to. That's an interesting shield there. Now Armenian, being very aggressive, pushing up his Persian bows, he sees that the cavalry of Iraklis isn't close enough to support here, and Iraklis probably doesn't want to push his cavalry too aggressively up either. So let's see, Armenian King using his flaming. Heavy would probably be a good idea here, just because although there isn't a lot of armor on these Gothic pikemen, there is some, and only having base damage to deal with that is perhaps not ideal. And firing on these Persian bows here is Greek Iraklis. This is not the units he wants to deal with. It's nice for Armenian to be able to deal with the Gothic pikes here of Iraklis, but firing on these the Germanic archers firing on Persian bows, these are not targets you want to be firing too much at. And not using precision here, Greek Iraklis, I don't quite understand why. When you're using flaming, using precision is going to give you guaranteed kills, basically for free. Now the Persian bows, of course, they do not have precision. So this is one of the few times where I'm going to have the time to do close-ups, because usually in some people, not as much recently, but before, people will be asking, well, can you take some more close-ups of the battle? The issue with doing close-ups is that this is probably my favorite view of the battlefield, because then I can get as much of the battlefield as possible. Because in these competitive games, there are a lot of things happening at the same time, and missing an important move done by the player to have a look at animations that you could see at any other time it's not the way I want to do multiplayer battles. In friendly battles, sure, if something cool happens, but not really in... here we have some burning bushes, but not really in competitive games. They are about what the players are doing, not about how animations and such look. So the first unit of Gothic pikemen off the field here. would have been interesting to see if that could have happened faster with standard shot or heavy. I think it would, since there is some armor to consider. They are, of course, not too happy about being under fire like this. Germanic archers have got some kills, but if you look at their ammo count here, they are down to 8 ammunition, and 8 ammunition, only 30 kills on Persian bows. These are very cost inefficient. These are very cost inefficient Germanic archers. So this is one of the ways you can get a skirmishing advantage, in terms of just having a fuck ton of dirt cheap skirmishers. And this is doubly bad for Greek Iraklis, because he has the range advantage, but he's firing at maximum range here, while these Persian bows fire at the units in front. So at this point the range doesn't matter that much. Iraklis could actually move up a bit here and get more kills out of it. But having more skirmishers, having expendable skirmishers is... And these Persian bows are not as expendable as, for example, Nordic bows or other very, very cheap 100 cost archers. So the Sassanids have to put some funds into their archers, but they do have 45 missile damage, so that is something. Here we have Iraklis pushing out one of his noble Gothic lancers. They could take a lot of damage here from Persian bows if Armenian King is firing on them, but it doesn't look like Armenian King is focusing fire on them. He missed an opportunity there to do a lot of damage to these noble Gothic lancers. Let's see if he takes it now. No, he's still not firing at the noble Gothic lancers. So now he's firing at the noble Gothic lancers. Yeah, that did a lot of damage. If he had focus fired from the start there, then he would have gotten some very nice kills there, I think. Pushing up his Prestigban, but the Germanic archers just exert their range dominance over the Prestigbans and fire. But these units, all of these units of Greek Iraklis, of Greek Iraklis are essentially getting neutralized by 6 Persian bows of Armenian King. So these Persian bows are neutralizing both the Germanic archers, not by virtue of killing them, but by virtue of removing all of their ammunition, and also removing the pikes by virtue of killing them. So he's not going to be able to kill all the pikes here, but just removing the skirmishers, ammo on the skirmishers, really takes away one of the strengths of Greek Iraklis' army here. Because even though the Thracian warriors are good on the charge, they are not nearly as good as the Danax units in prolonged melee, because they don't have the 20 bonus and they don't have a range of 2 on their weapons. So much weaker in extended combat than Danax wielding units.
One of our units can no longer fire!
Now the Germanic archers are just about... These are their final volleys here. And these kills are not efficient kills on the Persian bows. The Persian bows aren't getting a huge amount of kills either. But once again, being very useful in taking away a few pikes and neutralizing all of these Germanic archers. So they're not firing now for some reason. Now they're starting to fire. Just focusing on the pikes here. Armenian King does not want to fight these pikes. He doesn't need to worry that much about them with his elite Elamites. Very low charge bonus, and elite Elamites are high melee defense, decent armor, decent health. Not great charge bonus on these guys, so these guys can do a decent job against pikes frontally. But the pikes not being able to stop the shock cavalry, because these Prestigban in one-on-one against noble Gothic lancers, medium shock, very heavy shock is just going to slaughter, absolutely slaughter noble Gothic lancers. I like what Armenian King is doing here. He's just putting his depleted bows up front. And Iraklis creating a formation, a V formation. I don't think I've seen this done in Attila before. Creating a V with his pikes up center and Germanic bows as a screen for his noble Gothics. His pikes are just running, pushing here. He's opening it up his center though. And now moving out towards the flanks under protection of his pikes. And these pikes, I don't think Armenian King needs to fear these pikes from the front at all. And now he's firing with his Daylamites here. Actually getting some kills with the Daylamite precursors. The question is whether it would be a good idea to save those precursors for the Thracians and the Lancers. But the cavalry fight, just by cavalry alone, this is Armenian King's fight here. But Iraklis being smart with his Germanic archers, using them as shields from his noble Gothic Lancers. And imagine this happening in a real battle, like the general saying, "Okay, archers, you're out of ammunition." Instead of saying "job well done" and withdraw and go home to your wives, would you mind just walking in front of the cavalry for a bit? Just no reason, just would be nice for the cavalry to have a few hundred men just walking in front of them. I'm sure they won't just charge through you, and I'm sure the enemy cavalry isn't going to charge you. Just to be nice, sort of. I'm sure that would be very, very, very popular among the men. It's actually nice to see one of these longer battles as well, because the previous battles between Armenian and Iraklis were super short. And it looks like Iraklis is being the impatient one here. And he basically loses his noble Gothic Lancers for it. Now, let's see just how badly the noble Gothics get wrecked on the charge here. And they even had a screening support by they even had a screening support by these Germanic archers. But yeah, the noble Gothic Lancers are losing decisively on the charge. Over here though, the Persian nobles got pretty wrecked on the charge, so very nicely done there actually. What looked like a silly move by Greek Iraklis actually turned out to be calculated risk to get at the general, the Persian noble general. It looks like it worked here. And the noble Gothic Lancers just do not stand a chance. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in this fight though, because we have elite Daylamites up against noble Gothic Lancers and Germanic nobles. So this is a very similar engagement. In the center here though, Thracian warriors rushing in, rapid advance on the Prestigbans. They should get some nice kills here. It's going to take them quite some time to whittle down the armor and the health of the Prestigban. 289 health is absolutely insane. But yeah, cleaning up this fight is going to go very quickly for the Thracian warriors. The general of Armenian King is just holding on here in the center. And it looks like this fight here with, yeah, the Prestigbans are just so much more durable than the noble Gothics. And I have to say, this strategy with shock infantry and cavalry, it just works so much better with a Nordic faction or Burgundians because of the bonus against infantry. These Thracians are decent enough, but in extended melee they just do not hold up to sword units. So the Sassanids here are holding out, and nice rear charge here on the noble Gothic Lancers, by the noble Gothic Lancers, into the Daylamites. Here Thracians are fighting Prestigbans. Prestigbans charged and Thracians disappear. The Persian nobles are still amazingly enough alive. This is such a close fight. Yeah, very, very close. But the Sassanid general of Armenian is about to go down. And the general of Iraklis is absolutely fine. So, oh, the general, did he survive? Yes, he did. Massive at this point in the battle. Absolutely massive. So the Persian nobles came back. There is nothing able to kill the Persian nobles quickly here. Pulling out his Pushtigbans here is Armenian King. And in this extended fight, the Daylamites, this is the kind of fight that Daylamites likes. No cavalry charges incoming, and basically just grinding it out with a few shock infantry units and a few shock cavalry units. This is the fight of the Daylamites. But here, this noble Gothic Lancer could be very, very dangerous in this blob here. It looks like it's going to crash straight into the Pushtigbans. I thought the Pushtigbans were going to rush in there to try and stop the Lancers, but it looks like they weren't. So 2 units here of Armenian are going to be routing off the field. It's a good idea that Armenian isn't engaging his Persian nobles here. These units just need to stay where they are and not die. Thracian warriors getting wrecked. The Germanic nobles outside of Shield Wall are not going to be able to stand up to Daylamites. And all across the battlefield, the units of Iraklis are putting up a fight, but they are slowly getting ground down by the Sassanids. The Sassanids had the sturdier cavalry in this fight, and they had the sturdier infantry, and that served the Sassanids fairly well here. If this was a combination of Burgundian Royal Lancers and Burgundian Axemen, I think this battle would have gone very, very differently. But I quite like what Armenian King did with his army here, but not. I don't see why Iraklis would waste all of his ammunition on the cheap Persian archers. Armenian getting a nice rear charge here on the Germanic nobles, and that basically should be it for the Germanic nobles. Yep, the general dies, and now it's Chain Route City for the Goths. No, I'm sorry, for the... Yeah, these are Visigoths. So looking at the kills here is going to be fairly interesting, I think. I'll just fast forward until the end of the battle now. Some very interesting plays done by both players here. Seeing the Sassanids beat something Germanic. Well, I think the mistake Iraklis made was that he didn't bring enough Germanic units. He just brought the Germanic archers, and of course everything needs to be Germanic. But the Pushtigbans are absolute beasts. The Daylamites, as long as you don't get them charged, they are decent enough. I really like the army of Armenian King or Suleiman Bernabar here. Very nice army. A very close battle. The Thracian warriors, they actually do quite well. And once again, if these were Danax units, they would destroy. But the noble Gothic Lancers, only being medium and being fairly fragile. Let's have a look at the Visigoths, by the way. So, Visigoths, or both the Sassanids and the Visigoths. So, the Sassanids, the Pushtigban, very expensive shock cavalry, but you do get quite a bit of killing power for your money. I tend to prefer the Grivpanvar, but Pushtigban are definitely a step up from the Grivpanvar. And it makes sense if you can only bring a certain amount of cavalry. It makes sense to bring the best cavalry that you can bring. So for the Visigoths, these Lancers here, 725 and medium shock. In my humble opinion, noble Germanics would be the better choice because they are heavy and because they have more armor and more health, also more morale. No, they don't. Sorry. But yeah, I think noble Germanics would be a superior choice against the Sassanids. And I also think that Thracian warriors are sort of unnecessary if you just want to be supporting your cavalry fights against, particularly against the Sassanids that don't have very good melee cavalry. So build that I think would be very difficult for a Sassanid army to deal with would be something like something more Germanic than what Iraklis brought there. So it's going to be 6 Gothic warband, it's going to be maybe just 5 Germanic archers, because if you bring 5 Germanic archers, what you can do then is you can support your cavalry with Gothic folksmen, and you can give your cavalry some upgrades as well. So this type of army is going to be very difficult to deal with. It can stay at range, pour down the flaming on the shock cavalry of the Sassanids. It can support its cavalry fights, and the Gothic warband is going to do a massive amount of damage on the charge. Still, it's not going to be insta-win, but it's going to be something that's difficult for the Sassanids to deal with. But I quite like. I haven't seen that particular army by the Sassanids before that Armenian King brought. The issue with the Sassanids, one of the issues with the Sassanids, in my opinion, they have very expensive bows for what they're actually able to do. They underperform massively compared to the bows of the Germanics. And bringing these Prestigben cataphracts was turned out to be a good move by. They essentially buy you the time to get your elite Daylamites into the fight, and elite Daylamites fairly cheap now, so can be worth bringing. But if the Sassanids had as cheap archers as the Germanics have access to here, let's say they had the Germanic bows, and the Germanic bows are 100, but they only have 35 missile damage. But let's just say that the Persian bows were 150, and you could afford additional Sogdian warriors, for example. That would be very useful for the Sassanids in the cavalry fight. But as it is, the Sassanids give away too much in the skirmish department, and they give away too much in the cavalry department. They are so reliant on getting good charges with their very expensive Prestigben. If they can do that, then the Sassanids are in decent enough shape. But in the grind out fight, they really need their Daylamites to not get charged by shock infantry and cavalry. So another great game by these. Although it was a long game, I wasn't bored for a second of it. So very nice to see the different paces. The first battle between these guys and the second battle, just straight up rushes, very short battles, and then we get a long drawn out tactical game where Armenian King came out on top with the Sassanids. Don't see that very often in tournament games. Strength and honor.